I killed a demon. A chilling statement whispered into the night, flat, emotionless, almost surreal. The 000 emergency line rang quietly as the man on the other end calmly confessed something that didn't seem to belong in this world. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't shaken. He simply stated it, as if reporting a routine event. Police were immediately dispatched to a quiet house in Metford, a peaceful suburb in New South Wales, Australia. The street was so still that the only sounds came from the officers' footsteps and the shutting of their patrol car doors. Behind the front door lay a crime scene, but more bizarre than anyone could have imagined. The man who called it in, he was waiting. Jordan Miller stood at the front door, unarmed and unbothered. He didn't flee, didn't hide, didn't even hesitate. Instead, he pointed down the hallway and said, "She's in the bathroom." That was it. No panic, no explanation. Inside, a sight froze the officers in their tracks. A young woman lying lifeless on the cold bathroom floor. Her skin pale, bruises lining her neck, hair damp against porcelain tiles. She looked like she had no idea what hit her. Her name was Emerald Ward, lovingly called Emmy. She was just 23 years old, bright, kind, full of life. And the man who had just calmly handed himself in? He was her boyfriend, her trusted companion. The person her family had welcomed, even believed in. Jordan Miller. Why would a quiet artistic university student suddenly become a killer? Why had no one noticed any warning signs? How could someone go from being a lover to a murderer in a single night? No one had the answers. Not yet. But what was known now, without a doubt, was that a crime had taken place, and the man responsible for it truly believed he had done the right thing. He didn't think he had killed Emmy. He believed he had saved himself from a demon. Emerald's family was shattered. Her mother, Tanya, sobbed uncontrollably, crying out, "She wasn't a demon. She was the light of my life." A mother's scream echoes differently when it comes from a place of irreversible loss. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a betrayal that tore a family apart. Neighbors later admitted they'd heard arguments in the days leading up to the incident, but no one interfered. They thought it was just another couple having a rough patch. They were wrong. And this time, silence cost someone their life. Jordan never denied what happened, but he never expressed guilt either. He never said sorry. He never cried. From the moment he made that call to the moment he was taken into custody, he maintained one belief: I killed a demon. This wasn't just a crime, it was a mystery, a psychological puzzle, a descent into something darker than anyone could have imagined. And this is the disturbing truth behind the death of Emerald Ward. A story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and the thin line between reality and madness. Jordan Miller and Emerald Ward were once a couple people admired. They met during an art event at university where they both studied visual arts. Emerald was radiant, outgoing, bright, and kind. Jordan, on the other hand, was quiet, intelligent, and mysterious. She was drawn to his depth. He found in her a kind of light he never had. They dated like many young couples do, movies, painting together, listening to indie music, dreaming of a creative future. To everyone around them, Jordan seemed like a good guy. He didn't smoke, didn't drink excessively, had no history of violence, and was doing well in school. Nothing in his past suggested he was dangerous. And that's exactly what made the truth so terrifying. The beginning of a shift, a so-called spiritual awakening. In his first statement to police, Jordan repeated one core idea: everything changed after a spiritual trip he experienced just 11 days before Emerald's death. That was the day he took a hallucinogenic substance. It wasn't the first time, but this one was different. He described it as opening something inside him, giving him access to another dimension of reality. He claimed he'd reached a higher state of spiritual awareness, where the material world was just a mask hiding something much deeper. A truth only the awakened could perceive. To an outsider, his words sounded delusional. But the way he spoke, calm, convinced, methodical, suggested he really believed it. Subtle signs of paranoia, ignored by everyone. Jordan said he started sensing a shift in the energy around him. He began telling friends he could see things others couldn't, that he could feel hidden forces moving through space. He believed something dark had entered his life. And then, he started seeing Emerald differently. At first, it was just a look. Then strange questions. "Are you really Emerald? Do you remember when we met?" What are you hiding inside? Emerald didn't understand. She thought Jordan was stressed or going through something personal. But in reality, it was the beginning of a mental collapse he couldn't stop. Love turned to fear. When delusion replaces reality. One night, while they sat together in their living room, Jordan turned to her and said, "You're draining the life out of me." She laughed at first, until she realized he wasn't joking. Jordan told police he believed she had been replaced, that she wasn't Emerald anymore. Her body was the same, but something evil had taken over her soul. That belief consumed him. A warped sense of defense, two choices, kill or be killed. Jordan claimed he was left with no other choice. Either this entity would destroy him, or he had to stop it before it was too late. He believed no one would believe him if he said his girlfriend had become a demon. So in his mind, this was self-defense. He waited until she went into the bathroom, vulnerable, alone, and then he attacked. He told officers that as he strangled her, she tried to fight back. She scratched him, gasped for air, begged for help. But to Jordan, those weren't the sounds of Emerald. They were the last cries of something evil. He said, that wasn't her voice, it wasn't Emmy anymore. And just like that, Emerald was gone. But in Jordan's mind, he hadn't murdered his girlfriend. He had destroyed a demon. Calm after chaos, a chilling post-crime behavior. When it was over, Jordan didn't run. He didn't panic. He didn't cry. He calmly picked up his phone and dialed emergency services. "I killed a demon," he said. "Not, I killed Emerald. Not, I made a mistake. Not, I'm sorry." That was all. When police arrived, he was waiting at the door like someone who had just fulfilled a duty. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't emotional. He simply pointed down the hallway and said, "She's in the bathroom." Family and friends in disbelief. No one saw it coming. Jordan's statement sent shockwaves through both families. Emerald's mother, Tanya, collapsed in grief. "I thought he was a good boy," she told investigators. "She trusted him. We all did." Jordan's friends were equally stunned. He was quiet, a bit introverted, but never weird, one classmate said. There was nothing about him that screamed danger. That was the most terrifying part. No one saw it coming. It raised a disturbing truth. Can you ever truly know the person you love? After giving his statement, Jordan was placed in custody, pending a psychiatric evaluation. Investigators began combing through his past, his history with drugs, journal entries, social media posts, looking for anything that might reveal whether this was premeditated or the product of a fractured mind. As the days unfolded, strange details began to emerge. But that is a story for the next chapter. After his arrest, Jordan Miller remained disturbingly calm. During the initial interrogations, he showed no signs of anxiety or fear. Most striking of all, he expressed no remorse. He told police, "I didn't kill a person. I killed a demonic entity that had taken over someone I loved." At first, investigators assumed this was just an excuse. But as psychiatric experts began their assessments, the case grew far more complex than anyone had anticipated. Crime scene findings: no struggle, no signs of rage. Forensics combed through the home. There were no signs of a fight, no broken items, no blood anywhere except in the bathroom, where Emerald's body was found. That alone ruled out a violent, spur-of-the-moment altercation. Jordan had used no weapons. He strangled her with his bare hands, applying force long enough to cut off airflow, resulting in asphyxiation. This wasn't a split-second loss of control. This was deliberate. Cold. Steady. In his statement, Jordan explained she was fighting, yes, but that wasn't Emerald. She had already been replaced. This made the police question everything. Was this premeditated murder, or was it delusion turned deadly? No matter how many times he was questioned, Jordan never wavered. He couldn't recall exact times or sequences, but one belief remained constant. This was a matter of survival. He described Emerald as a demon cloaked in human skin. He claimed he could hear supernatural voices and see visions no one else could. He was convinced she had been possessed, and if he didn't act, she would destroy him. Seasoned detectives called it one of the strangest interviews they'd ever conducted. This wasn't a man fabricating a defense. This was someone who truly believed what he was saying. No hesitation, no deflection, just conviction. The case moved quickly to trial at the New South Wales Supreme Court. Prosecutors charged Jordan Miller with first-degree murder, arguing that strangulation by hand is an intentional act, one that cannot be excused by temporary mental impairment. Jordan pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney claimed that he had suffered from drug-induced psychosis, that he was incapable of distinguishing right from wrong at the time of the killing. His team presented a history of hallucinogen use dating back to his teenage years, but prosecutors countered with a blunt argument. He chose to take that substance. He chose to put himself at risk, and he must now face the consequences. They acknowledged the psychotic symptoms, but emphasized a key legal distinction. This was not a pre-existing mental illness. It was a risk Jordan took of his own free will. A mother's pain and the weight of loss. Throughout the trial, Emerald's mother, Tanya, sat in the courtroom, her grief spilling out for all to see. At one point, she stood and shouted across the courtroom, "My daughter wasn't a demon. She was the light of my life, and you killed her, not because of a disease, but because you were weak." Her outburst silenced the room. Emotion is not evidence, but the rawness of her voice spoke louder than any legal argument. It raised a powerful question. Can we forgive someone who truly doesn't know what they've done? Or does justice demand that someone answer for the life they took, no matter their state of mind? Psychiatric evaluation. Inconclusive but damning. After the initial hearings, Jordan underwent psychiatric evaluation. The early report noted clear signs of delusional thinking, possible acute psychotic disorder, but no evidence of schizophrenia or chronic mental illness. No indicators of malingering, faking symptoms. Experts stated that while Jordan's mental state was compromised, it was most likely caused by the drugs he willingly ingested, and therefore did not meet the threshold for criminal insanity. This placed his defense team in a difficult position. They could not argue full innocence, only a plea for reduced sentencing. Final verdict. The court rejects temporary madness. After 12 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Jordan Miller was guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison with a minimum of 13 years before parole eligibility. The courtroom reacted in a wave of quiet release, some crying, some sighing. Jordan remained motionless. He didn't flinch, didn't bow his head, didn't apologize. The court had spoken, but behind that verdict, haunting questions still lingered. Public response, torn between sympathy and outrage. Outside the courtroom, public opinion fractured. Some saw Jordan as a victim of a mental health crisis, someone who shouldn't be held fully responsible. Others were furious. To them, this was just a dangerous precedent, a way for violent offenders to escape justice through claims of psychosis. In a local poll, 63% agreed with the 20-year sentence, 27% felt he should have been sent to a psychiatric hospital, 10% believed he should have received life without parole. The divide ran deep. Emerald's family, the pain that never ends. For Tanya, no sentence would ever be enough. She told reporters, "I don't care what he was seeing or hearing. My daughter is gone, and no amount of jail time brings her back." She carried Emerald's photo in her purse. Every time she opened it, her hands trembled. "I just want people to remember her for who she was, not for what he thought she was." Legal battle continues. New evidence, new questions. Just as the case seemed closed, Jordan's legal team filed an appeal. They claimed to have new medical evidence suggesting Jordan suffered from undiagnosed severe schizophrenia, not just drug-induced psychosis. The court agreed to review the appeal. The case wasn't over. In fact, it was just getting started. 2 years after Jordan Miller was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder of Emerald Ward, most believed the case had ended. Her family, though forever broken, had accepted that some form of justice had been served. But then, everything changed. A new diagnosis, and a shocking appeal. In April 2024, Jordan's legal team filed an appeal with the New South Wales Supreme Court, not for procedural errors, but based on new psychiatric evidence. While incarcerated, Jordan had been transferred to a mental health unit within the prison due to worsening behavioral symptoms. There, an independent team of forensic psychiatrists conducted a full reassessment, and their conclusion sent shockwaves through the justice system. Jordan Miller was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Not a temporary psychotic episode, not drug-induced delusion, but a chronic, severe, undiagnosed mental illness, likely developing for years before Emerald's death. The court agrees to reconsider the original verdict. With these medical findings, the appeal was accepted. A special hearing was called to determine whether the original conviction was still valid. At the hearing, the new team of forensic experts testified that Jordan had been in a complete break from reality at the time of the killing. He truly believed Emerald was a demonic entity. His actions, they argued, were driven by a distorted reality, not by anger, revenge, or hatred. The court ruled, given the new medical evidence, the defendant lacked the mental capacity to be held criminally responsible for murder. The original 20-year prison sentence was vacated. Jordan was no longer an inmate. He was committed to compulsory treatment at Bloomfield Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility for violent offenders. Emerald's family, devastated again. When the ruling was announced, Emerald's mother, Tanya, collapsed in grief once more. She called the outcome a second betrayal, not by Jordan, but by the system. So now, my daughter wasn't murdered by a killer, but by someone not criminally responsible. Then who carries the weight of this loss? Many in the community shared her outrage. While some understood the complexities of mental illness, others saw the decision as an erasure of accountability. To them, it was justice, reversed. Another blow. Jordan resurfaces on Tinder. If the overturned conviction stirred anger, the next twist sparked national outrage. Just months into his stay at Bloomfield, several young women in the Orange region of New South Wales began sharing screenshots of a Tinder profile belonging to a man named Jay. He looked familiar. Too familiar. It was Jordan Miller. Some had already matched with him before learning who he was. Jordan, the man who had strangled his girlfriend during a psychotic episode, was now actively seeking romantic connections from inside a psychiatric hospital. Public backlash, fury on social media and beyond. The internet exploded. National media outlets picked up the story. The questions came quickly and loudly. Why was a dangerous psychiatric patient allowed access to a phone and dating apps? Why were women unknowingly exposed to a man with such a violent past? Who would be held accountable if something happened again? Under mounting pressure, Bloomfield Hospital revoked Jordan's phone privileges and suspended all temporary leave considerations. But the damage was done. People were terrified and furious. But the bigger question remained, will he ever be released? As of now, Jordan Miller is no longer a convicted felon. Legally, he is a patient undergoing treatment, and under current New South Wales law, if doctors deem that a psychiatric patient no longer poses a danger to the community, they can be released. No fixed sentence, no parole board, no mandatory life term. One day Jordan Miller could walk free, and if he chose not to disclose his past, no one would ever know who he really was. A killer, declared innocent, or a loophole in the justice system. Jordan's case raised disturbing questions. If someone kills during a psychotic break, are they innocent? Or do we still hold them responsible for the consequences of their actions? Some legal scholars argued, justice must remain rooted in fact. If he lacked criminal intent, he cannot be punished as though he had it. But others, including victims' rights advocates, responded, and what about the victim? What about the family? Where is their justice? Justice for Emmy, a movement born from grief. Tanya, Emerald's mother, no longer believes in the courts. She formed a group called Justice for Emmy, campaigning for reforms to laws involving mentally ill offenders. She told reporters, if he can use Tinder in a mental hospital, he can get behind a wheel, or worse. Don't tell me we're safe. The debate continues to divide Australia. But one thing is clear. The case of Jordan Miller and Emerald Ward is one of the most controversial, heartbreaking, and disturbing in recent legal memory. And the scariest part? The next chapter hasn't even begun. The case of Jordan Miller didn't end with a vacated sentence or a revised medical diagnosis. It ended in public confusion, legal paralysis, and, most painfully, in the quiet, unhealed grief of a mother who lost her daughter. Tanya, Emerald's mother, said in a recent interview, I don't want sympathy. I don't need another explanation about mental illness. I just want one thing. That my daughter not be forgotten. She's done everything she can to keep Emerald's memory alive, organizing exhibitions of her artwork, launching an art scholarship in her name, and repeating to anyone who would listen, she was kind, she was a victim, she is not just a footnote in someone else's psychiatric story. An incomplete truth, but one we must confront. We can empathize with those who suffer from mental illness, but that doesn't erase consequences. Emerald is dead, killed by the hands of someone she trusted, in the home where she once felt safe. Though Jordan is no longer legally considered a murderer, to those who knew and loved Emerald, he will always be the one who took her life. That is a reality that cannot be undone, and a truth that must never be forgotten. A justice system caught between law and medicine. This case didn't just highlight personal tragedy. It exposed a gaping hole in the legal system when it comes to dealing with mentally ill offenders. Criminal law is built on accountability. If you do wrong, you face the consequences. But when the person committing the crime can't understand right from wrong, the system begins to falter. Punishment seems cruel, but release seems dangerous. And so we enter a legal gray zone, where there is no perfect answer, only a constant tension between emotional pain and legal principle. The unanswered question: who protects the next victim? The Tinder incident inside the psychiatric hospital didn't just spark outrage, it forced a painful question into the spotlight. Are we truly monitoring those who've killed before? If one day Jordan is deemed safe to re-enter society, who will take responsibility if tragedy strikes again? Is there a system in place? Will there be a warning? No one knows for sure. And that uncertainty is terrifying. From Donald Cliff's An Ending or a Beginning? In the final scenes of a documentary about this case, there's a haunting image, the Donald Cliffs, where another murder took place in 2016. From the top, you can see the sea churning below, dark, endless, unforgiving. That image wasn't accidental. It symbolizes the fragile line between sanity and madness, life and death, justice and error. Was the case of Jordan Miller and Emerald Ward a tragic ending? Or just the beginning of something much harder to see, still unfolding quietly in the background of our society? The silence that speaks the loudest. Perhaps the most disturbing part of this entire story isn't the murder. It's not the killer. It's the silence of the system. A system that doesn't speak for victims. A system that can erase a prison sentence but never restore a life. A system that has become used to making compromises in the name of medical complexity, while those left behind can only scream into a void. There are no winners here. Jordan lost his freedom. Emerald lost her life. Her family lost everything. And society lost its sense of certainty. We've learned that mental illness must be acknowledged in criminal investigations, but it must never be used as a free pass to avoid accountability. The law must be compassionate, but also strong enough to protect the innocent. And above all, we must pay attention to the people around us. The small signs, odd behavior, strange words, emotional shifts can be the first alarm bells. If someone had listened to Jordan earlier, maybe Emerald would still be alive.